What is up, guys? Today we are revisiting Ghost of Tsushima here on the backwards compatible on PlayStation 5. Yes, as you see here, this is the PS4 version, and I'm not going to give any reasons why I'm playing the PS4 version, but I just have it installed. But however, the reason why I'm making this video and, revisiting this game as of 3 years later, and that's usually how long it's been out for a while now. But however, what I love about this game, I think this is definitely one of the best Sony exclusive games we've ever had, opposite that of Spider-Man, that we've had back, I believe it was in 2018 or 2019, around there. And so what I'm trying to get to is that I think Sucker Punch did an amazing job with this game. They are also a company known as making the Sly Coopers back in the day, and that's where this game really falls under a really good way of showing of what these games can do in terms of its graphic fidelity. And that's what I love about, whether if it's old school titles or the new generation of hardware and games in particular, are much like Ghost of Tsushima. And I think Ghost of Tsushima does an amazing job of what this game is doing. And, it shows, whether if you're playing on the PS4 version or the PS5. I would say I think the PS5 version is a lot more it's a lot nicer, really, I should say, because of the fact that, it is on a newer generational hardware, which is the PS5, obviously. But that's where I believe that's where the newer generation really has its own unique type of kick. And what I mean by that is that the PS5 really utilizes these types of games in general, especially when it comes from the previous generation to the newer generation, much like Ghost of Tsushima or much like God of War Ragnarok. And so, the PS5 is able to do a lot of better utilization in terms of being able to show what these games can look like on a new generation of hardware. And I do believe that the PS5 does an amazing job on that. And what I want to get to here is that this game is still remarkable. It still looks absolutely amazing regardless of what version that you're playing. And what I loved about this game in general, more so what I've just previously mentioned, is the fact that this game still holds up as of today, in 2023. In terms of its graphic fidelity, its visual fidelity, and how, like I said, of how far this newer generation of hardware has come, and how far the gaming industry has come when it comes to making games that are going to be either backwards compatible or, basically having PS5 versions. There have been games that were able to have free PS5 upgrades, and that's one thing I want to mention here, though, too, is that Ghost of Tsushima's upgrade cost $10. And I will say is that I don't think that was a really good move to do. I mean, I understand why they did it, but to me, it felt completely unnecessary because a lot of people were not wanting to pay an extra $10 to get the PS5 upgrade. Much like that I did, of course, because I wanted to get the DLC, which is, I forgot what the DLC was, so my apologies for that if I have not included what the DLC is in this video. But however, and perhaps, that Ghost of Tsushima is definitely one of a very unique type of game to where it's in feudal Japan. And I think that's another reason why I think this game really stands alone and really stands apart from that of, any other next generational games, whether if it's God of War Ragnarok or whatnot. And that game was absolutely fascinating, but regardless, I did not finish that game, but we are talking about Ghost of Tsushima here. This game really does a magnanimous job of its combat, fluidity, its structure of the game itself. I love the world and its environments, and this game just does something I was never really quite expecting when I was initially playing this game because I initially ended up having this game on my PS4 before it even died. And so it's just like, well, what am I going to do now? Because I literally had to play on my PlayStation 3 for a good solid month until I finally get my PlayStation 5, and I ended up getting the PS5 version. And so that's where I feel like that when it comes to Ghost of Tsushima, it is a game to where it shows everything what I've just previously mentioned, and I think it does an amazing job with that. What I will say about the gameplay mechanics more so, and specifically, is that, this game, it's so good. I love its story though too. You play as Jin Sakai. He ends up becoming a samurai, an ultimate badass samurai, and that's where I feel like that this game really does a good job of showing where the story is going to go. And so, but I love that progression system when it comes to a game like this, or even story games for that matter. But like I said, much like God of War Ragnarok, or God of War 2018, or much like Ghost of Tsushima, or any other games that we have on this newer generation of hardware. But that's where I feel like that's where Ghost of Tsushima does a really good job of being able to utilize the graphic fidelity of what this game looks like, especially on a newer generation of hardware. And that's where, it's not just about the combat, it's not just about the story, but it shows of how powerful the PS5 can be. And I do not have an Xbox Series X, but I can't imagine what a game like this could look like on that system as well. But however, I don't have the Xbox Series X, so I really can't say much. But however, I do believe that if we did have no more exclusives and have all, Sony exclusives go to the Xbox, and, being able to utilize that system as well in terms of its power and in terms of its CPU and its video card or visual fidelity on that system, that would be kind of cool though too. But it's not on that system because Sucker Punch is a AAA party company that only produces exclusive games for the PlayStation. And and it's kind of weird or odd how they did it that way, or the way how it is, but it's just the way it is. And so that's what I want to say about that. Now, I want to go back into the environment of this game. I think the environments in this game, or the environment itself, is one of the best I've seen, especially on the PlayStation 5. And, being able to understand that when it comes to a game like Ghost of Tsushima, showing its visual fidelity, showing that graphical approach, and how, and basically comparing it to God of War Ragnarok, and that's where I believe that this game really it's absolutely amazing what this game looks like. And what I will say is that I have thought about making like a comparison video on this game, via through the PS4 version or the PS5, and I'm sure that there are a lot of people out there that already have done that, so I might not do that at all, but we'll see. But I want to talk more about this game because I really can. It's amazing that sometimes I have a hard time figuring out what I really want to say, but it has to do with I sometimes just wing it. And it depends on how much knowledge I have. But what I will say, when it comes to the visual fidelity of this game, much like, what the characters look like, and their profile, and the garments that they have on, and that's one thing I love about, Ghost of Tsushima, though, too, because when you play this game on New Game Plus, after you finish the main game itself, you are able to get the ghost gear. And what I will say, it's absolutely amazing. I love its robust of its coloredness. And that's another thing that I think that's where Ghost of Tsushima does a really good job of showing that fidelity from that graphical standpoint into what the uniforms will eventually look like when it comes to whether if you're playing on the PS4 or the PS5 versions of the game. And I think that's just absolutely phenomenal to me. So what I want to say here, though, too, is like I really think that the gameplay is opposite of that of like God of War Ragnarok or any other games that are specific to the PlayStation 5 console. The gameplay is one of the best. It's utterly fun, and there's no. What I'm saying is that it's graphic, it's gory. And so I think that's where Sucker Punch did a really good job on its gameplay fluidity. And that's where I feel like that this is going to be definitely still one of the best games on the PlayStation 4 or 5 amongst from that God of War. And to me, it kind of makes sense that way because, you know, it's like more often than not, I feel like that when it comes to, you know, PlayStation exclusive games specifically, or Xbox games specifically, not all games are going to be created equal. You know, there are, you know, sometimes games will not always look the best, but that's where Ghost of Tsushima does an amazing job on it in all fronts. And that's what I love about this game. And what I will say, I love the character progression with Jin Sakai. I think he's a really remarkable type of character. And I don't know, I forgot who the character's name is that portrays him in this game. But however, he does a magnificent job. And what I will say here, though, too, is that I refuse to use English subtitles and English language in the game. I prefer to have English subtitles along with the Japanese language because to me it just feels more natural and organic, and that's where I feel like that Ghost of Tsushima does a really good job with that though too. Much like I'm sure there are other games that are kind of like maybe somewhat specific to like or unique in a certain different kind of way to what Ghost of Tsushima does in terms of that language aesthetic. But even still, I still believe that Ghost of Tsushima does a really good job with that. And I love that. I think it's, like I said, it's one of the best I've seen. And I'm hoping that what Ghost of Tsushima 2 will do when it comes to this newer generation of hardware that we have now, especially on the PlayStation 5. And I'm sure that Ghost of Tsushima 2 is going to be a couple of years even ahead of us right now. Because this game did initially come out 3 years ago. We are in 2023. This came out in 2020. So I'm sure that they already have Ghost of Tsushima 2 already greenlit and being made or in post-production. But we don't know that for sure yet. But hopefully we will find more things out as of sometime maybe this year. Or if not this year, or maybe sometime next year. But we'll see what will come when it comes to Ghost of Tsushima 2. Now, there is another thing I would really like to put here too is I love the enemy archetypes in this game. You know, you have archers, you have enemies that will bear shields, you know, and so it's like what I'm trying to get to is that you had different stances. And I'm really trying my hardest to figure out what the stances are. I'm sure there's one called water stance, stone stance, wind stance, and I forgot what the other one was, but bear with me. So, you know, each stance is going to be able to be heavily influenced of what style of, you know, when it comes to the enemy archetypes and how they are going to be able to attack you. Much like if an enemy is going to have like a long halberd or something like that, or dual wielding blades. Like I said, I have a hard time differentiating between what stances are going to be more appropriate to each type of enemy archetype. But however, there is one stance in particular that I really thoroughly enjoy the most is, I believe it's the wind stance or the water stance, I believe. It's one of the two. But what I love about this game, though, too, is that you are able to deflect enemies' attacks. If you do it right and time it right, you are actually able to kill them within one slice and hit. And that's where I believe that I love that utilization of what Ghost of Tsushima does with that type of gameplay combat mechanics to this. And like I said before, the combat in this game is thoroughly enjoyable. It's magnificent, it's very good, it's very, very fluid, and that's what I love about this game as well. It's the combat. And, you know, usually when we have games like this, the combat is not always going to be the best thing in the world, but sometimes they can be. But it depends. I also believe that it depends on the game. It depends on how you're going to do the combat type of focus and what you are able to do with that type of combat. And that's what's really cool about that as well in Ghost of Tsushima. So another thing I would really like to put in here is that Ghost of Tsushima is going to be one of the best games I have ever played amongst others. But I still believe that, you know, like I said, I want to know what Ghost of Tsushima 2 is going to do if it comes out at some point. We don't know yet. And that's one thing I would really like about this game is that, you know, it's everything. It's the combat, it's the story, it's the fluidity of everything. I just love the atmosphere. It's gorgeous, it's robust, it's vibrant. And that's where I think that's where this game is one of the most important games when it came to the PlayStation 4 and eventually came to the PlayStation 5. And that's where I believe that this game is still remembered. And that's why I'm revisiting this game as of today. And so that's what I'm saying is, like, you know, it's really hard to really understand or what you're really trying to say or to come across of how to possibly, you know, think of what's going to be a game that's going to be worth revisiting. And I think Ghost of Tsushima is definitely one of those games for sure. Because, you know, like I said, the story is magnificent. It's amazing. And it's very much similar to that of my experience with Red Dead Redemption 2. Red Dead Redemption 2 actually ended up being my personal game of the year for 2018. And it's very... What's interesting, though, too, is that game is very similar to what the story is in Ghost of Tsushima. And I would say I think Ghost of Tsushima and Red Dead Redemption 2 are my two top favorited, best story-driven games I have ever played. Opposite of that, you know, like old school games, much like the Legacy of Kain series, however, but even still, Ghost of Tsushima still incredibly holds up as of today, of 2023, and it's remarkable. And what I'm trying to get to is that I would love to see games like this. It's very unique, or it's very odd how games nowadays don't always have a really good incorporated type of story to it. And it has to do with the implementation of it, though, too. It has to do with the writing. And what I will say, though, too, is that the direction in Ghost of Tsushima is one of the best. And like I said, I'm comparing it to Red Dead Redemption 2, though, again, as well, is that game had magnificent writing. I love the story progression in that game. I love the character progression in that game. And that's where Ghost of Tsushima has that different type of similar way when it comes to that character progression, when it comes to the story, and it has to do with the writing. The writing is always going to be is always going to have to be one of the main focuses when it comes to single player games in general. And I believe that's where Ghost of Tsushima really sets it apart from any other games out there. You know, God of War Ragnarok had a magnificent story. I love that game. It was fantastic. But, you know, God of War 2018, that was a fantastic game, though, too. But that's where I said, you know, Red Dead Redemption 2, Ghost of Tsushima, God of War 2018, or God of War Ragnarok, we have all these single-player games. But that's where I said I want to be able to have games like this, whether if they are exclusive or not. And I really want to see games to where they are going to have a magnificent story, excellent writing, and that's where I think it's the most important. It is the most important to know that we need to have these types of things in a game like this. And I love that. And I think it's great. So that's all I can say about that. So what I'm going to put here in closing is that if you really want to play a game, whether if it's 2023 or 2024 or 2025, I do highly recommend playing this game. I think, like I said before, this is one of the best I've played, opposite amongst others. Like I said before, God of War Ragnarok, God of War 2018, Red Dead Redemption 2, or even old school games like I previously mentioned about, like the Legacy of Kain series. You know, that was a magnificent series as well. And that's why I love single player games in general. And I think like I said, I'm hoping that we get games like this again. You know, I'm hoping we get games that have magnificent story. And it's not just about the story, though, too. And what I will say here, though, in turn, is that Ghost of Tsushima has an excellent story quest driven experience, whether if it's the side quests or with the story itself. And like I said, it's magnifique. It's the magnum. I believe that Ghost of Tsushima is the magnum opus for Sucker Punch. So, but anyways, this is Citizen JV. Thank you for tuning in. Greatly appreciate it. But if you have any comments or questions, please feel free to put them in the comment section below. I'll be more than happy to reply back if and whenever possible. And I hope you guys have a good rest of your night. Peace.